Welcome back to Car Wizard's Garage, not the dumbest automotive YouTube channel on YouTube. And today we're going to talk about this really sweet 308. You guys have been keeping up on all the updates on it, and it's time for another installment of what we've got going on a 308. Let's get started. So the focus of this installment or this video is the engine. We've been working really hard. Actually, Magic Mike's been working really hard installing Nick Forza's electromotive distributorless system that just deletes the distributors, and we'll show you guys that in a minute. And as you can see, this Ferrari is red. It is not Riptide blue. It's not that color. This is red. So I'll get Magic Mike over here and we'll start taking a look at all the wiring we had to do. It was a really big job. Magic Mike? So we are converting this to the Electromotive XDI, but specifically the settings have been set up by Nick Forza's Ferrari, specifically for this engine, a 308 engine. And I've had Magic Mike go through and wire it up. Nick Forza's hooked us up with this kit, and we're really appreciative of that. If you guys have one of these cars and you're looking to do the distributor delete, you definitely want to check into Nick Forza's Ferrari. So there's a bunch of things here, Mike. What is this here?
So that's actually our amplifier for the tachometer. So on this car, this control unit is generating a 12-volt square wave signal.
Yep.
But our car is going to require 120 volts in order for the tachometer to work correctly. So that's what this is for. This is an amplifier.
Okay, so it gives a signal so the gauges up front can actually see a tachometer signal, a correct signal.
Correct.
Okay. And there's a couple of power relays here.
Yep, so these two relays are actually going to be for the coil packs that are on the other side of this firewall. And then we have our main control unit right here.
Okay, and this is the XDI control module for the entire distributorless system. The way that it gets its signal to understand the location of the engine is from a crank sensor that we've mounted. So as you can see down there, there is a reluctor wheel that has been bolted or kind of anchored to the harmonic balancer, and then there is a crank sensor that bolts to the timing cover, and you set it on the, how do you set it? Which tooth was it, Mike?
It's the trailing edge of the 11th tooth. So what I did was I took an orange paint marker, painted my 11th tooth, and then I set my crank sensor on the back edge of that tooth.
Okay, that's how it knows that that's number one, top dead center.
Correct.
So now we've taken a carbureted engine that didn't have any computerization at all, really, and now we have a crank sensor, a control module, a tach amplifier, and some power relays. Let's take a look over here at the ignition coils. So Magic Mike has gone to work and bolted these ignition coils directly to this rear firewall area. He's got all the wires plugged in going to each cylinder. Each coil pack will run 2 cylinders. This is a waste spark system. So it'll fire 2 cylinders, one on the power stroke and one on the exhaust stroke, and it switches back and forth between those. So that way you use 4 coils instead of 8. And you can see all the wiring he's had to run. It really is not too complicated. It's just to try to make it look nice and clean, and that's what he's doing. He's making it look really, really good. You can see we put a small little black piece of sheet metal there to keep heat coming from off the exhaust manifold or the header and roasting these poor coils and wiring and things. We do not want that to happen, so that keeps the heat down there and blowing out underneath the car and not onto the coils. So what do you think the hardest part of doing all that was, probably?
Making it look cosmetically appealing. You know, I'd still like to do a couple of things to make these spark plug wires look a little nicer and a little more organized, but making sure that it's just got a nice aesthetic to it to make it not, I know it's not going to look factory, but I want it to look as close as possible.
Yeah, it's looking really good. You guys remember on the previous videos, this had some sort of Ford Motorcraft converted distributor, something up front. It really wasn't a very good system. That has been thrown in the trash. Now it has 0 distributors, and also from Nick Forza's Ferrari, I got block-off plates that block off both areas where the distributors would have been in the past. And Magic Mike has got those installed. He's getting close to finishing up on the wiring and all the different things to make this system run. and I'm very, very pleased with the work. I'll let you get back to it over there, what you was doing, so thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. So the carburetors are cleaned, gone through, rejetted for the kind of driving that I want to do, and we're starting to go back together with those while Magic Mike is finishing up with the wiring. Not only were the carburetors set up for full throttle running all the time, not for drivability, but for full bore, pedal to the metal. That's what they were set up for. They were not set up to drive around town and have a little decent cruise. There was a lot of debris in the carburetors that you've seen on a previous video. I've got that all cleaned out, and that was from a fuel filter that's over there. It's starting to degrade. And Jared from Wrench Every Day told me, Car Wizard, you need to get that fuel filter changed out. That's probably where that's coming from. Because he had gone through all those and cleaned them out, and he was actually disheartened to hear that there was still debris in there. And that's where it's coming from. I'll show you guys here in a minute where that's at. But as Freddie would drive this thing like on the racetrack in the Car Trek series, he actually notes that at idle or cruising around, this thing ran horrible. But when he did get it on the track and gave it the beans, he said it smoothed out and it was good power and it ran like it's supposed to. That's all good and well, but that's not the way I'm going to drive it. I'm not even going to take this on the track. I'm not going to race it. I'm not really into racing. I'm into spirited driving, a little bit of sporty driving, but not into full-on racing. I don't really give a crap about that stuff. So I pulled the jets and things out of these. They have the F36 emulsion tubes. I stayed with that stock. I did some research online to find out what is a good setup for these carbs for good power and good drivability. And I kept coming up with the same numbers, people that have gone through these carbs, and the results that they got were positive, and also the jets that they used. And I'm going to go with that setup. It did have 175 air corrector jets. I have now gone with 200s. It also had main jets of 150, which is really kind of rich, and now has 135s. Like I said, the F36 emulsion tube. And the idle jet, I believe, is a 60 or something like that. I can't remember the exact number on that. I didn't have to replace that. I didn't mess with that. So I went through and put all new gaskets, new accelerator pumps, all different parts. I got a kit that includes all the pieces and parts actually from Italy, not from China, but from Italy. It was kind of expensive, but I wanted to do it right. We have 3 carburetors down. I'll go ahead and put the 4th one in place. This is what they look like. It's a Weber DCNF 40. It's 2-barrel, 1 for each cylinder. These are numbered. They have to go in a certain sequence. Because of all the complex linkages and things that go along here, there's choke linkages, this is like a thermostat for the choke, or actually for the idle, for high idle, cold idle. And then you have to connect all of the different throttle arms together. You have to hook up all the fuel lines in a certain sequence. It's kind of complicated. And even once I get all of that stuff set up and properly hooked up, it's not done yet. I'll go ahead and assemble the top part of this carburetor and show what that looks like. I'll just set the pieces there. So here's a rubber gasket. And then a plate. Another gasket. Here's a venturi or horns, whatever you want to call them. And then the filter and the cap will go on top of that. These are actually Weber filters. There will be 4 of these individual filters set up just like I just showed you. And I kind of would like the stock setup, the original air cleaner, but when you go to buy one of those, of course it's Ferrari pricing. I was actually looking on eBay and I found the correct large air cleaner so that I could run a duct around to this side for a good cold air intake. I thought, well, that'll be good. And I was almost ready to click buy until I saw just a basic air cleaner with a filter. It was almost $2,000. Now, I know that's part of owning a Ferrari, but I didn't see the reason for spending that kind of money when I already have filters. $2,000 to make it look a little bit more stock. I may do that down the road, but right now I just want to get it running and driving. So It will have the 4 individual filters, and that'll be the way it'll be for a little while. If it was like a modern supercar, Murcielago or something like that, or even the Ferrari 360s where they have glass right here and you can see the engine, I definitely would have spent the coin and got the nice looking air cleaner. But it's hidden under the bonnet here. You can't see anything, so I don't know if this is for better performance. I can't see how. It's been sucking in hot air instead of cold air through the scoop down here. And someday if I come across one that's really cheap, a lot less than $2,000, I might spring for it and go ahead and buy it so it looks stock. My goal with this engine is not hot rodding and max power. These cars weren't fast to begin with, and they can be fast, but you have to get into $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and pull the engine and have it modified. And again, that's just not something I'm really interested in. So I'm trying to make it look stock and run as stock as possible. It does have aftermarket cams, but it'll have a lot better jetting, and it looks a lot better. It looks like it's supposed to with the black valve covers, timing covers, but it will not have the old style distributor. A lot of guys that have these cars have actually said that they really didn't modify anything. They kept it stock. It just did away with the distributors because the tune-ups are so high. Even though you expect Ferrari pricing on parts, even guys that own these cars just don't want to spend $1,000 for a set of wires and some spark plugs and a cap and caps and rotors. This is totally the way to go, the Nick Force's Ferrari electromotive distributorless system. And I think it's going to run better, idle better, maybe even have a little bit more power, a lot more voltage. So that's going to be really, really sweet. So when I ordered this kit from Nick Force's Ferrari, I told him about the cams, the way the engine's set up and everything, and he dialed it in specifically to that. So we should be able to hook everything up and start it up. We don't have to mess with timing or anything. And that's exactly what I like to hear. I don't want to mess with distributors and timing and advanced units and all that stuff. I want a computer to do all that for me. But I still want to keep the carburetor sound because these older GTBs and GTSs with carbs are highly sought after specifically for the sound that you hear. It's an amazing sound. You lose that sound and also a little bit of performance when you go to the fuel injection in the GTSI or the GTBI. So I'm going to keep them carbureted. So there's a little bit more wiring to go, Magic Mike, and then I need to set up these carburetors, and there's one last step that I have to do. I'll take this air filter off and I'll show you guys. So you have to synchronize these carburetors, and you really can't do that by ear or by listening. And that's where this little guy comes in. This is a gauge, a synchronization gauge. And while the engine's running, you actually put the cone shape of this into the throat, just like that. And while it's running, you'll get a reading, 2, 3, 5, or whatever. All the carburetors should be balanced. So you should get a similar reading on all 8 throats of these carburetors in order to get them balanced. Without this gauge, you really can't get it dialed in perfectly. There's an air setting, there's also idle mixture setting, several different settings you'll mess with to get this dialed in. I think these are 30 or 40 or 50 bucks depending on where you get them, but you definitely need one of these to do these carburetors. Whenever we get to that point, we'll do another video and we'll show actually setting up the carburetors. It'll be really cool. So before we start the engine, I will put the dash back in so I can put the gauges in so I can watch and monitor those readings. But we're not going to focus on the interior, the full reassembly of it, until I know the engine's running perfect, everything's up to snuff. And then we're going to get all the interior reassembled. I still have to fix the power windows and run some wiring through the doors, fix some of the wiring. As you've seen in Car Trek, Freddie took the doors off and the wiring got a little bit messed up during that. The doors are back on. I still need to fix the wiring. We'll show that in a video. And I need to fix the power windows. The last thing I really need to spend some money on to finish this out is going to be a set of seats, either 308 or 328. I want to make it look like it's supposed to in here. They had the rose seats. I'm not sure if that's a brand or even if it's around anymore. Those are not going to be going back in. They're too small for me. I'll put the stock seats, which will fit me a lot better. If any of you guys have an old 308 or know of one that's sitting somewhere that has some decent seats in it and they'd like to get rid of them, let me know in the comments. I will definitely probably latch on to a set if they're a good price. So we've got a little ways to go on this, but we're getting really close. Every video we do on this, we're 2 or 3 steps closer to this being a running and driving car. It was a running and driving car when it came in, but it didn't run and drive like a Ferrari is supposed to. It will, however, when I'm done with it. If you're curious what kind of tools we use to work on this, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. They're all listed for sale there, and we get a small cut. You want to make sure you hit the subscribe button because you want to keep up with this Ferrari. You're definitely going to want to hear it when it's up and running. It's going to sound amazing. Thanks for watching.